Tom Houston rocks.
Okay, so today I had an amazing opportunity. You all know Jeff Steitzer, or maybe you don't. You definitely know his voice if you play any of these Halo games. He is the voice of God, as they say, in the multiplayer. He announces the games. He says double kill and kill-tacular and all those amazing voiceovers that make Halo multiplayer so much fun and so engaging. And so I got an opportunity, just through pure coincidence, I was able to actually meet him on Facebook. I requested to be his friend, told him I was a big fan, and he accepted. I did some fun artwork for him just as a fan. He liked that, and then I told him it was my birthday, which was Sunday, and he said that for my birthday that he would give me a call, just to be nice. So we kind of set up a time, and I set my camera up and stuff, and I recorded the whole event for everyone to see. So I hope y'all enjoy it. The first thing I wanted to know, and I was real curious about, is how did you get into the voice acting work to begin with? What got you into doing that kind of thing?
Well, when I first went into I was in Seattle for almost 30 years as an actor and a director. When I first moved out there, I joined a company called the Empty Space, and there was a fellow in town who has since very sadly passed away, named Greg Palmer, who had an advertising agency. And he preferred to work with actors as opposed to simply, voiceover people. And he came and saw the work of our company and loved the sensibility of the company because it was very wacky, very crazy, very much of the mid to late 70s, that sensibility. And we were all sort of, maniacs. And so he thought that was great. So he hired us to do commercials for him. And that's kind of how I got started. And then, basically, once I was doing voice work, I just kept doing it. Basically for an actor, Tom.
Right.
You put together any kind of career you can. I don't think anybody just say is a theater actor. They also will try and do some film or TV if it comes along. They might do an industrial or a photo shoot or anything they can do. So I just basically, went out for any voice job that came along. And then at a certain point, and I guess this must have been in the late 80s, early 90s, I think that probably would have been about right. I can remember specifically being sent out to audition for an on-camera gig on a game called Phantasmagoria.
I remember that game.
Yeah, and I didn't have a clue what it was at that point. I wasn't computer literate at all. And I thought, what? Computer games? What? I had no idea what this was. And then it just so happened that where I was living in Seattle, there was a cop who in his spare time taught some of the local folks for a very reasonable price how to work on computers. So I took that course. I went, this is easy. And I got a computer, and I got a bunch of games, including Seventh Guest and Myst and some of those things, and played them, and I thought, this is great. And then as it turned out, I actually got cast in the second Phantasmagoria game.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
I wasn't able to do it because I had been offered a stage role.
Oh.
I very much wanted to do for a variety of reasons, so I didn't do that. But then later on, I got a call to audition out at the Bungie Studios when, they just formed their alliance with Microsoft for something called Halo. I had no idea what it was. Nobody did at that point.
Right.
I went out there and I read the Master Chief, and in fact was told originally that I'd been cast as the Master Chief.
Yeah, I read that online.
And I was like, cool. Whatever that means, I didn't know what it was. And I passed, and some of the folks that I knew had been also cast in the game, like Jen Taylor, who plays Cortana, David Scully, who plays one of the sergeants that has been in all the games. They'd already been out recording their stuff, and I thought, well, this is strange. How come they haven't called me? So I had my agent check, and it turned out that I think they got cold feet because they didn't know me, and they went ahead and cast the fellow that they'd worked with before, the Bungie folks had, from Chicago, who ended up doing Master Chief. But I was told, they still want you to do the game. They want you to do the multiplayer announcer.
Right.
I was like, well, I was disappointed. But then my friend, who does the sound for the game, basically said, dude, they're going to hear you so much more than anybody else when they play the multiplayer game. I went, oh, okay, that sounds great. So I went in, and as with all of these things, you know, it really, it's so strange the way you record, because you go into one of these little dinky booths, and you're in the booth, and the recording engineer is out recording, and there's generally a single writer. And occasionally, Marty would drop in just to kind of see how things are going. And, you know, you'd get, I don't know, however many pages, and you'd get like, you know, 30, 40 lines to a page, and you just go down, and they say, okay, give me 3 of each of those things. You go, double appeal, double appeal, double appeal. You know, you just give them some things to choose from.
Right.
You move on to the next one, and then after you've done a certain section, they would say, okay, we need to go back and, you know, take another pass at line 6 and line 14 and line 23. You go, oh, okay. And generally, I don't think I ever spent more than 2 hours in the recording studio doing all of that. Now, at the same time, they had sat me down and they showed me some of the visuals they were working on, for instance, for Halo 1 and a little bit about it. But I never knew what was going on in the game. They never told me.
Wow.
And they gave me a copy of the game, starting with the second game, Halo 2. But I said, well, does this come with an Xbox? They went, no. So I never played them. I never played Halo.
Right. That was one of my questions. I wanted to know if you ever played it, or if you played any video games. You said you played some of the, like the Seventh Guest and the Mist.
Early on, I did. I was a little bit less interested, I think, in some of the shooter games. I was kind of really intrigued by, for some reason, the puzzle games.
Right.
So, for instance, Phantasmagoria, if you remember it,
Yeah.
was about, you know, this couple that goes to this small town, I think on an inlet somewhere on the ocean.
Right.
And all these weird things are going on, and he's like being possessed by some demon, and, you know, in the end they have to actually get the demon to fight him, and, you know, all these things are happening. But in order to get around and figure out what's going on, you have to solve all these different puzzles. Seventh Guest was very much that way as well.
Yes, it was.
I love the
And Mist as well. I love those games.
It's ridiculous, yeah.
Well, that's
It
great.
was so bizarre because, you know, you walk into a deserted world where there's all this evidence that people have been there, and it was kind of spooky, you know?
Oh, yeah.
It was like wandering into a giant warehouse after the business had, you know, moved away. You know, you didn't know what had happened. It was very interesting, and I liked it a lot. And it's one of those things that, it's like anything. Once you start to notice something, it seems as if it's everywhere.
Yeah.
You know, and everyone's involved in these things. And all my friends were doing voices, and I did a bunch of games for kids. There was a company out there called Humongous that did Spy Fox and Freddy Fish and Pajama Sam, and I did all those.
Wow.
And then we did something called No One Lives Forever.
Yeah, I was looking at that online today. I never played it, but it looked like an interesting, I believe, PlayStation 2 game.
Yeah, it's sort of, I think it's kind of a James Bond kind of thing, got a bit of a sense of humor.
Right.
And I did the first one and the second one, and then I did it's so weird because the way you do these, you don't necessarily, you know, carry around, you know, a real strong memory of what you did. But I also did Aliens vs. Predator 2.
Yes.
And I did Midtown Madness.
Right.
For Microsoft and the Russian front. And there was another strange sort of Dungeons and Dragons type of game I did, although I can't remember what the name of that was. Yeah, I did quite a few of those things, and then when I got to New York, I ended up doing a little bit on maybe the third Grand Theft Auto.
It was, I believe it was the Grand Theft Auto that they put out. It was Vice City, Liberty City Stories.
Was that with stories or something?
Yeah, and it was for the portable, the PlayStation Portable.
Was that what it was?
Yes.
I honestly can't remember. But they're great fun. I mean, you know.
Yeah, I want to ask
that
you
was interesting because we were recording a radio show.
Right.
And normally you go into the studio and you're all alone.
Right.
You know, even if you're doing dialogue and stuff, you're really all alone. And in this case, they had all 4 of us who were recording in the studio, and we did the whole radio episode, which was about a half hour long, I think, maybe, or 20 minutes.
Right.
The whole thing straight through.
Yeah, because in the game, when you drive the cars around and you turn the talk radio station on in the car in the game, it's a constant. Yes, it's a constant. It's like a real radio show, and it's a really amazing thing.